You first, Shane. Why is GEO becoming so important as we move through 2025 and into 2026? And what's driving this shift? What do brands need to understand and how discovery is changing? It's a broad question, but it's a good one to get started.
Yeah, it's definitely a good place to start. I think ultimately why it's becoming more important and why it's becoming more important is ultimately because more people are using it. And the reason why more people are using it, certainly in the discovery phase, is because in many cases it offers a more useful experience compared to something like Google. So I think most people, if not everyone watching this, will have used ChatGPT or similar tools. And if you're looking for information, it's much more valuable to be able to ask that question and get the instant answer compared with kind of jumping through different websites and trying to sort of find what you're looking for. But it's also really, really useful to be able to have that back and forth because most people asking a question will have follow-up questions. And the whole experience is just much, much more useful, certainly in that discovery phase. It's not going to be the case for every industry or every brand. If you work in the, I don't know, the legal sector, for example, there might be a kind of trust question around using something like ChatGPT versus something like Google, which is much more established. So it's not the same case for everyone. But ultimately, I think it's a much more useful way of finding information as you're kind of early on in that sort of buying journey compared with the kind of traditional way of using Google search. I think a lot of people will still continue to use Google, which we can obviously see them doing. It's not that they're just kind of taking all that traffic by any means, but I think we will start to see the kind of pace in terms of usership rapidly increase into 2026, as we've seen this year as well.
And sort of like before I come over across to you, Matt, do you think this has anything related to do to sort of age as well and sort of demographics around that? Like for myself, I use it quite frequently, but I know that my wife doesn't. I know that my parents don't even know what it is. But then the younger generation, where I've been out and about, they are using it all the time. So I mean, is that going to have an impact on sort of like how quickly it's adopted and how that would move forward?
It's a really important point, and I agree. There's definitely a kind of demographic element to it. I don't have the data to hand, but I would agree that the older generation are a little bit more behind. The younger generation are definitely using it as their kind of go-to. My son, he uses Google's AI mode as their kind of default rather than Google now. And there'll obviously be kind of early adopters, people who work in technology and everything else as well. So it is a key thing to consider. But generally speaking, I do think most people are using it more and more as time goes on, and that's just going to continue to kind of go through the roof into next year.
Hmm. And moving to yourself, Matt, like why do you think that geo will become so important through 2026? Obviously, Shane's outlined a number of different areas here, and we just talked about the usership in terms of demographic. I mean, what else could there be to make sure it's important?
I mean, realistically, it's the fact that it goes beyond just search for a lot of people. So a lot of people are integrating it more into their kind of day-to-day jobs, essentially. So obviously, you've got everybody from kind of, again, going back to demographics, you've got everybody from kind of kids who can use it for school, you've got students at university, but equally, you've got people within kind of every industry are able to make use of it within their day-to-day role. So it's not just essentially, it's not just a replacement for Google, which I think is the thing that has been the most seismic shift and probably the reason why it will, in the end, kind of take market share from Google in ways that kind of Bing hasn't been able to do and that kind of thing. Because realistically, even AI mode within Google, you probably don't even use that in the same way that you do like a ChatGPT, for example. So yes, you would use it for kind of search stuff, but you're not using it for kind of create me this image or write me this content or doing those sorts of things, which has added usage basically. So as people adopt it for those things, it will then become part of their default workflow rather than kind of just I need to use Google or this. It's like I'm already using this, so I'll kind of search within it as well. So it's probably the biggest. I would probably even put it as a bigger switch than when kind of Google took over from Yahoo. From a search behavior point of view, it is literally an equally, if not bigger, change in the way people search stuff and kind of from a even a language point of view, the sorts of queries that people are putting in, it's very different. It's very different. Although, like, obviously Google for ages has been saying kind of people are using longer queries to get results. This is just kind of turbocharging that, basically.
Mhm. And I guess it allows them to just generally have a conversation rather than to put in those very high 1 word, 2 word sort of intents. It's very long tail, specific prompts rather than queries.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, if you were to like complete whiteboard, you've never heard of a search engine before, how would you design it? That ability to have a kind of conversational text and kind of get the answer right there in a kind of in a form that you trust is probably where you go to it. You wouldn't necessarily design Google or kind of similar stuff. You would probably go something more akin to ChatGPT or AI mode within Google anyway. It's just from where we started the technology. It's it's a bit like petrol and electric cars. If you designed a car purely on the benefits, you would probably say you would default go to electric. It's easier to maintain. There's a whole load of benefits to it. You wouldn't then go from that to petrol cars. You probably wouldn't go in the opposite way. You wouldn't replace Google if you already had ChatGPT or similar LLM, really.